Hey guys, this is going to be my first book review on this YouTube channel, and the book is Folks, This Ain't Normal by Joel Salatin. He's one of my favorite authors, and this is one of my favorite books that I've read in the last year or two, and I keep coming back to it to read little snippets out of some of the chapters because the information included is really good. So for those of you that don't already know, Joel Salatin is one of the leaders of what I would call the broader, healthy, natural farming community. And in that sort of just made up term, I include organics, biodynamics, permaculture, regenerative agriculture, biological, all those great things. And so he's a farmer based in Virginia, United States, and speaks all around the world. And he has his own farm called Polyface Farm. So it's a really good book for a few reasons, but if I had to just sum it up to you here, it would be that it's sort of like an educational manual for how you could improve a country. So it's very informative, but also his writing style is very entertaining, and then it's also educational. And I also I've learned a few new words from reading his book and his website as well. He's a very good writer. And so this book basically just goes over how we've kind of lost our way in modern westernized countries. And he just shares his thoughts on a huge range of topics. So it's not just about farming. And that's why I think this is such an awesome book, because you get to learn about a lot of different areas and his views, and he shares a lot of information. So basically, sometimes he covers some history of the USA and how farming systems have developed around the world over the last 100 years. For example, how the kind of chemical synthetic NPK fertilizer industry had a head start on the biological fertilizer proponents. So what I mean by an educational manual is, here, this is the contents of the book. There's a few more on this page here, but you just look at the range of different topics he's got covered here. Home, and he also has funny titles for the chapters, so you actually can't really tell exactly what they're about. For example, this one, a cat is a cow, is a chicken is my aunt. I mean, if you read the book, you understand why the title of that chapter is what it is, but yeah, I mean, that gives you a little bit of an idea. So, he covers family life, how relationships have in many ways declined due to the overuse of technology, separation, too much time with screens. He gives you obviously a basic understanding of his way of farming. I think beyond organic is one way of describing it, the Polyface style of farming. So you learn about how his farm works. He also goes over home food production and how society has shifted, and people, well, not everyone, but quite a lot of people are more interested in manicuring, perfecting the lawn than maybe just having, a fruit tree and a couple of chickens to provide them some eggs, for example. And he talks about some statistics. If most people who weren't in huge cities and they had backyards had a couple of chickens, we wouldn't really need the cage chicken industry. He also talks about fad diets and people's disconnect from their food, and people just not understanding the difference between a CAFO farm, so like confined animal feeding operation, caged or confined chickens and pigs and cows, versus a farm like his. And it's that, I think he calls it a pendulum kind of reaction where people see extreme videos that get shown about the poor conditions that some animals are subjected to, and then people who watch that, they go in the complete opposite direction. Instead of just looking for the people who are doing it right and supporting them, they go, oh, it's all bad. So, he talks about that. Talks about unnatural foods and the chemical additives that are in the modern Western diet, and some of the resulting negative health effects that are associated with those sorts of additives. He talks about one of my favorite chapters is he does a little bit about the NPK fertilizer versus the biological fertilizers like compost, animal manure, etc. Because manure and nutrient cycling is going to be very important in the future if you want a closed loop. That's really the only way to have a proper nutrient cycle. He talks about healthy homes that save on energy and building costs, why we should opt for local materials and housing, food sales direct to farm consumer. For example, in some parts of the world, it's the Western world, it's difficult or illegal to purchase raw milk and other products, raw butter, raw yogurt, etc. And so he talks about why is that the case? And he didn't particularly write about this, what I'm about to say, but I think it's related to when you think about issues like 5G nowadays. We assume that raw milk is unsafe and something we need to be worried about and careful with, but somehow putting Wi-Fi routers through every school, around children, and then having 5G and having all this unnecessary amounts of non-native electromagnetic radiation, we assume that is okay. So we've sort of got like an upside down clown world sort of thing going on there. He also goes into our relationship with water, wasting water, and how we can improve that. How grass-based holistic grazing of ruminants is actually good for the environment. He talks about, obviously, classic issues like GMOs and the problems associated with them. Another interesting part is, and he's done YouTube videos on this as well, is the kind of attitude that, some people will say that, this high quality local food production thing, it's an elitist movement, and he explains why in almost all cases that's not the case, and most people can actually afford to eat this way some of the time, if not most of the time, but it's a question of priorities. And at the moment, in many parts of the modern Western world, people spend less and less of a percentage of their income on food. It's a lower and lower priority. And obviously there's economic problems that exacerbate that issue, but there's always, I think in many cases, the individuals could improve their situation just by making different choices. And he talks about that. All of these things that were once healthy and normal and part of a strong, prosperous society have slowly become less common. And he's pointing that out. And to be honest, I don't have an improvement on it, but I think the cover doesn't really do the contents of the book justice. It covers so much more. Maybe they could have done a picture of some rural agrarian township with farms all around it. I'm not sure. And one of the things, I mentioned in the introduction why I keep coming back to reading this book, and that's because what he does is at the end of every chapter, he has these instructions or, like 5 to 10 tips or things we can do, actionable things we can take action on today or to work on, sort of like a summary of each chapter. And I think that's such a great thing because it means you can go back and check them. So that's one of the things I really like about this book, that he includes that. And yeah, one of the, I guess, top quote, I mean, quote, the whole people caring about quotes is a bit of it's kind of cringe or cliche, but I do like how he points out if something's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly first. And, because people are always being told, or they kind of just assume, I guess, that, and I was like this as well, that, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing right, make sure you do it right. But that holds back a lot of people. And that's definitely something that's been a part of my life up until now. Well, up until the last few years, where I've cared a little bit too much about getting things done perfectly or well, instead of just, focusing on doing your best, which is a lot easier, just focusing on doing your best. So that's my review of his book. Joel is a really good author. He's written a number of books. He's also got a blog, definitely worth reading. If possible, I'd even like to interview him on my podcast. And even if you don't end up reading any of his books, definitely check out the videos he's featured in on YouTube or the other video platforms. There's one in particular that I often recommend to people. It's called Can We Feed the World? It's a speech or presentation. Definitely worth checking out. So thanks for listening. And make sure to subscribe, because I've got a lot of good content planned out to share on this YouTube channel and on Instagram as well.